Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take a bunch of sources, dig through them, and basically pull out the key insights for you.
Yeah, try to give you that shortcut to getting up to speed on something interesting.
And today, our mission, if you will, is to explore the poetry of Nataša Bajić. We've got excerpts from her collection Alaue, that's attached test, plus
Yeah.
her bio, and a couple of really interesting critical perspectives on her work.
Exactly. We're not just, reading poems aloud. We're trying to get a feel for the poet herself, her world, and what makes her words connect with people.
So, Nataša Bajić, who is she? Well, she's a Serbian poet, but her background isn't your typical literary path.
Not at all. Born in the former Yugoslavia, studied journalism first.
Right, and then psychology. And her poetry, it's actually been translated quite a bit. Russian, Bulgarian, English, Bengali, and Turkish, which we'll see in the collection title.
And beyond writing, she's worked as a psychologist. She's also involved in the literary world now through a social welfare center and the Autumn Poets Festival in Smederevo.
There was something in her bio that really jumped out at me. Her own summary of her life. Born by mistake, succeeded.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a statement, isn't it? It's defiant, almost.
That makes you wonder, doesn't it, how that feeling, that idea of overcoming a mistake might, seep into her poetry.
Definitely suggests resilience, or maybe, like you said, a need to assert her existence, her value through her art. It's a fascinating lens to start with.
And look, getting into a new poet, it can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
True. But think of this deep dive as your guide. We'll map out what makes Bajic's voice unique and why critics have taken notice.
Okay, let's dive in. Let's unpack how her work was first received. The sources talk about the editor who first saw her poems.
Yeah, and this is quite revealing. This editor, they were bracing themselves, Literary magazines get flooded, absolutely swamped with submissions.
Thousands of them.
Exactly. And the editor basically admitted, thinking, okay, here we go, another amateur writer I need to wade through. It's refreshingly honest, that sort of initial skepticism.
But then the reaction was completely different.
Totally. A really strong emotional hit. The editor even said it felt like reading censored articles from back before the internet. That kind of raw, urgent feeling.
That's intense. And the upshot was?
They decided right then and there to publish everything she'd sent. Everything. Which, that doesn't happen every day. It says a lot about the immediate power in those poems.
It really does. And one of the critics we looked at, Dusan Gojkov, he offers some insight into why her work might have that effect.
Right. Gojkov makes this interesting point that Bajić isn't writing directly about, say, the war or poverty or the big societal shifts in Serbia. Not explicitly.
You don't see those headlines in her poems.
No. But Gojkov argues her poetry still evokes those things powerfully, just indirectly. It's more like she captures the feeling, the atmosphere of living through those times.
Though it's under the surface. How does he describe her style then?
He calls her a classic narrator. And he says she's reviving a style that's almost been forgotten, something called Vinoverism from the period between the wars.
Vinoverism. Okay, what's that? Can you unpack that a bit for us?
Well, Gojkov describes it as conversational, almost humorous on the surface, seemingly light. But underneath, it's tackling really profound truths.
Like having a coffee with someone who just casually drops these deep insights.
Exactly like that. He sees it as her moving away from, very formal, lofty poetry. It's more grounded, more immediate. And she uses that casual feel to slide in these really sharp observations about serious stuff, which makes them hit even harder because it's not preachy.
That makes sense. Profound, but with this sort of offhand charm. Gojkov also mentions love poetry in her collection, Kis Bir Halatan Uzundur. That's Night is Longer Than a Rope.
He does, but again, he says it's not traditional love poetry, not in its form anyway. It's more like the feeling or scent of love is just there, woven into the fabric of the poems.
So capturing the essence, the atmosphere, rather than big declarations.
Seems like it. A more modern take, maybe more internalized. It's about the trace love leaves, perhaps.
And Gojkov's final word on her.
He's pretty emphatic. He calls her one of the best, most promising poets of her generation, and he feels she's been unjustly neglected by the mainstream literary scene.
That's quite an endorsement. Okay, let's bring in the other critical voice we have, Goran Đorđević. How does his perspective compare?
Well, Djordjevic talks about reading her first book, essay Sedmog Sprata, View from the Seventh Floor, and he immediately links her poetry to her being a psychologist.
Ah, bringing that background in again.
Yeah, he sees her exploring the thin lines of human existence, especially in these modern times, the search for identity after big collective traumas and personal ones too.
Which connects back to that born by mistake idea, maybe,
Right.
that sense of a precarious identity.
Could very well feed into it, yeah. And Djordjevic uses this really striking metaphor. He compares the modern poet to like a transformed ancient shaman.
The shaman. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
connection?
He sees the poet as seeking light, both, external light and inner light for humanity. Like a shaman trying to navigate the spirit world for their tribe, the poet uses words to light up our inner and outer landscapes, offering ways to understand, maybe even to heal.
That's a beautiful image. He also talks about night is longer than a rope in relation to mortality, right? Using an analogy from Ivo Andrić.
Yes, the story of Aska and the wolf. Andrić is a huge name in Balkan literature, Nobel laureate.
Right. So what's the story briefly, and how does Djordjevic apply it?
Okay, so in Andrić's story, Aska is this little lamb, and she faces a terrifying wolf. But she starts to dance, this beautiful, mesmerizing dance, and it hypnotizes the wolf, delaying her fate.
Okay.
So Djordjevic sees the wolf in the context of Bajic's poetry as symbolizing death, capital D, that constant presence, especially for a generation that's seen a lot of upheaval.
So the poetry becomes a kind of dance with mortality.
Kind of, yeah, a poetic grappling with that fundamental reality. Djordjevic points out this duality in her work, too.
Duality. How so?
There are these dark, heavy tones, definitely. But alongside them, there's always this reaching for healing and this really strong belief in the power of words.
Words like curses, oaths, prayers.
All of them. He mentions using words to navigate dangers, referencing the mythological Scylla and Charybdis, those treacherous straits, words as a way through.
So the poetry acknowledges the darkness, the pain, the loss.
Absolutely. It doesn't flinch from it. But crucially, there's this underlying thread of hope, a faith that language can not only articulate the struggle, but actually help us navigate it.
And Djordjevic ultimately sees this as affirming life.
Yes. He emphasizes this faith in the ancient power of words, their ability to maybe pacify these huge forces, and ultimately to uphold the meaning of life, a meaning he suggests can be found through love.
Interesting. So both critics, from slightly different angles, really highlight her significance. They see something powerful there.
Definitely. A unique and important voice.
Okay, well, this is the perfect point to actually turn to the poems themselves. Let's see if we can feel some of this in the verses. We'll start with Son is LVK, which translates to eternity.
Right, and straight away you get that sense of scale, fate, time, vastness, contrasted with, well, us, humans.
My steps are too small, and I have no wings to fly. That line really captures it, doesn't it? That limitation.
It does, and the poem ends with this quite unsettling idea that eternity might only come through death.
Only death will give the eternity I paid for it. Wow.
Yeah, it loops back to that question Djordjevic raised about confronting mortality. What's the price of the infinite? Is it finitude? Is it life itself?
Heavy stuff to start with. Okay, next up. Elemen Semi to the alchemist of the universe. This feels very direct, like a prayer or a plea.
It really does. The speaker is offering themselves up body and soul, asking for eternity. Sacrifice, transformation, it's all there.
Take me under your ceremonial headdress. Turn my body's fire into light. Take my soul.
It's incredibly intense. And later, the idea that lines must have a price, and eternity being paid for by death, it clearly echoes eternity, the previous poem. But here, it feels more active, like an offering.
A transaction almost. Okay, let's look at Jarrett. The sign. This one's dedicated to someone, Thomas Patrick Carson. It paints a very vivid picture.
A really strong visual, yeah. This woman on a mountain, like a beacon, burning with a millennium fire.
Guiding a hunter below. So, themes of longing, guidance, connection across a distance.
I think, though, the fire is the only sign of the night, suggesting this constant, enduring signal. And even when dawn comes and the fire fades, she starts to sing. Her song becomes the new sign.
So the connection adapts. It finds new ways to endure. That's quite beautiful.
It is.
Now, affect on. This feels like a shift in mood. More hopeful.
Definitely. There's a clear sense of optimism here. Everything will be all right, it says. Putting the past away, we will bury the dead.
And looking forward to something new growing.
Yes, and a future where basic needs aren't tied to money. A dawn, a day that will be longer than a rope compared to the night before it. A real transformation is anticipated.
Okay. The next one. Shulgulu, desert rose. The imagery shifts again, becomes much harsher.
Instantly. The desert setting creates this feeling of dryness, hardship, the need for toughness.
And the man described there who turns the world into barren land, whose heart is like the rocks.
Very stark. But then amidst all that harshness, there's this passionate plea for love to be strong enough to survive it, to return forever, like the legendary Rose of Baghdad.
So a contrast between that unforgiving world and this persistent hope for love's power.
Exactly. That tension is really palpable.
Ziyechayim, Atralanin, Antinda Belujma. Meeting under the olive trees. This feels very symbolic, looking forward and back simultaneously.
It's layered, definitely. Planting olive trees where we are no longer. It's an act of profound hope, isn't it?
Protecting the future, weakening the storms of centuries.
Yes, and honoring the past, too. Safeguarding dreams for those yet to come, paying tribute to the sleeping martyrs. The trees become living memorials, replacing gravestones.
And it speaks of future meetings under those trees, with a different you and another me, suggesting cycles.
Cycles of life, love, memory, sustained by these tangible symbols of hope and connection across time. It's very moving.
We also have a set of shorter, unnamed poems here. Reading through these fragments, do any common threads jump out?
Yeah, several things seem to echo across them. A sense of being lost or having lost something. Disorientation.
Like, Senbeni kaibeting chak toujours nazik sabaganeshi, you lost me unreal, gentle morning sun. That fragility.
Exactly. And a yearning for connection or maybe escape unknown void. Yardamet, help me. There's vulnerability where.
And that line, Kekshikligabenim izim de kaibuluyor, reality gets lost in my tracks. Things feel unstable.
Unstable, fluid. And that image, Kayum batabir merkandanizinde. My boat sank in a coral sea. It's beautiful, but also deeply sad. Hope lost in this vibrant, maybe dangerous place.
So taken together, these fragments build a picture of searching, grappling with uncertainty, like Georgievich's thin lines of existence.
I think that fits very well.
One of the named shorter ones is Bun Aslinda Dundu. Today is actually yesterday. The title alone suggests feeling stuck.
Right. It perfectly captures that weariness,
Yeah.
history repeating, or just being trapped in a loop because of someone's absence.
Even though the speaker says, Kazgan Dealim, I am not angry.
The feeling is still profound stuckness. Today is just yesterday again because of that loss. It resonates with that idea of trauma, personal or collective, that Georgievich mentioned.
Then there's Baya Ledim. Forgive me, lady. This feels quite different. Assertive.
Very. It starts with asking forgiveness, Bajaledim, but immediately flips it, I live life despite you, Sana Osman.
There's a strong sense of hidden passions, defiance against someone trying to hold the speaker back.
Yeah, my knight fears desires you never played with. And those intense final lines about being hit, about sorrows being born there, a child crying all night.
It hints at a deep wound connected to this relationship, maybe fueling the need for independence.
Seems likely. A real struggle for self-expression.
Igor feels very fragmented, almost dreamlike. What's your take on this one?
Disoriented is the word that comes to mind. Fleeting thoughts, images that don't quite resolve. Looking for a black and white song, not recognizing friends.
A sense of loss, maybe corruption, Kaltak Sunyer, or the borderline. Azim de Tos, dust in my mouth.
Yeah, like having exhausted all options and longing for spring colors against the bleakness. That mention of a Yadam Hayat half-life really sticks, feeling incomplete, suspended.
Tali, evacuation. This one has such a powerful urge for release, for freedom from everything.
It's incredibly intense. The speaker wants to be evacuated from, well, everything. Humanity, life, labels, relationships, even selfhood. Benny Shakalin, take me out, repeat it over and over.
That desperation. But then the ending is surprising.
It pulls back, doesn't it? Or, in the Serbian plains, leave me alone, you fool! Maybe true freedom isn't total detachment, but finding peace in a specific, grounded place. Solitude within roots.
Interesting twist. What about perspective? Perspective. This seems more philosophical.
It does. It plays with the idea that real understanding, where opposites blur, black is yellow, or white, might only come sakjish, too late.
Questioning if our usual understanding is maybe a Tuzak trap.
Exactly. And the imagery of the universe's riddle in every atom, the abortion of behavior of hopes, it makes you think about the limits of how we see things, the paths we miss.
Yurakel are creatures here. The speaker feels like an outsider again.
Yeah, observing these Garib Insanlar, strange people, who all seem the same. Limited, maybe.
But the speaker doesn't seem distressed by being outside.
No, it's more like they belong to something bigger. Identifying with those who pinch stars to rest, find the sky a little small, whose souls can become birds or clouds, a connection to the cosmos, maybe.
Shirain Mayalan Masi. The fermentation of poetry. Now that's an evocative metaphor for writing.
Isn't it? Words as grapes, changing over time, linked to Ayrılık separation, starting as sour green grape.
And slowly turning into wine by the 4th year.
It suggests poetry needs time, experience, maybe even difficult emotions, that fermentation, to mature, to gain its potency, like aging wine.
Efsaneler bizian geyolamaz. Our legends cannot be lost.
Grr.
This one seems to look back at myths, but with a personal angle.
Yeah, contemplating old stories, Achilles, Odysseus, and wondering if things could have been different. Maybe I could have ensured justice in ancient wars. Maybe I would have recognized you when Odysseus returned.
A sense of regret for missed chances within those grand narratives.
A little, perhaps, but end strongly. Our legends cannot be lost, affirming the power and relevance of their own stories, their own experiences.
Okay, Solomon Dancy, Salome's dance. That immediately brings up ideas of desire, danger.
Definitely. Using Salome's dance as a metaphor for unveiling raw, maybe destructive desires. Beneath the silent shame, Eros screams with maddened desires.
And it culminates in that ultimate act, the head removed, leaving only the place of execution.
It's stark, a really unsettling look at what lies beneath surfaces and how desire can lead to devastation.
Wulamin Dancy, the dance of death. Another dance metaphor, but very different.
Yes, here life itself is an endless waltz with death, a skilled, inevitable partner.
Dance to the heartbeats of the old universe.
And even though the speaker feels a tremor, they keep dancing gracefully. It suggests an acceptance of mortality, not necessarily pleasant, but as part of the cosmic rhythm, dancing with it rather than fighting it blindly.
Tunadan Barai, a lament from the Danube. The mood here feels heavy, melancholic.
Deeply melancholic, a sense of fated grandeur, silence where Roman legions once marched. The city is still silent in the night long.
Sorrow, lament, winter mixing with autumn, searching for something lost in the dark.
Even nature reflects it. The moon won't shine, the stars chase the silence. It's explicitly a lament, a profound sadness for what's gone.
Sonras and Yoksan. Then, If You Are Not There, a short but impactful poem about absence.
Extremely impactful. The idea that one person's absence makes the whole world feel like a piece of a toy. Easily manipulated, fundamentally altered.
If you are not there, nothing exists.
Yeah.
Everything is nothing. It really underscores the weight of that specific connection. Irreplaceable.
Utterly.
Is sure almost agaric and buisa.
Yeah, if this is how it must be. This sounds like acceptance, but with a hopeful note.
Yes, accepting the present reality, if this is how it must be, but looking ahead. Hoping shadows will stop spying, new dawns will come for new people.
Anticipating the pain and absurdity being undone, a seed will sprout.
Exactly. Holding on to that possibility of the better future, even while acknowledging the difficulty of the now.
We're nearing the end of our selection. Bura halatan daha uzun bargisi. A night longer than a rope. This title poem feels incredibly bleak. It is. Guilt and punishment are there, but the spirit is empty. That image of the night being longer than a rope, it suggests almost unbearable suffering.
A sad song. A planet is a garden of curses, time smelling of gunpowder. It's oppressive.
Very. And the final thought, that a swift death, this is a freedom piece in a way. It's such a bitter, desperate conclusion, highlighting profound hopelessness.
Okay, scalar masks. This seems to explore their symbolism quite deeply.
It does. Masks know and tell things. Bilir Visoiler, they protect and conceal. Koryuku Vezleichi, letting people live in their little stories.
They can also dominate, even kill a part of you.
Yes, there's that danger. And this interesting link of the ins in mask to Anne, mother, a universal fate. Choosing masks relates to skill, travel, hiding, escape.
And then a shift to society, imposing masks, suppressing individuality.
Right, leaving only the speaker to make their own. And the final advice, choose the right mask, it'll serve you well, until you take it off to show a clean face.
So both protective and potentially liberating when shed. Complex.
Very much so.
Naden Shir Yazyoram, Why I Write Poetry. This feels like a direct statement from the poet. Her manifesto, almost.
It really does. And the reasons are so Human, so relatable, to turn bad into good, to see the world anew, to understand life.
To reinvent happiness, give voice to dreams, close distances.
It's a powerful list, a real testament to why art matters, why language is so crucial for connecting our inner selves with the outer world.
Vieka famda chiligatiorlar. And They Scream in My Head. A haunting title. What's this about?
It's about the dead, how they persist in memory. They scream in the head, their lives achieving a kind of immortality through being remembered.
Candlelight, please illuminate. We are all dead.
That line is chilling. Suggests we're all carrying the past, the departed within us.
That's how it feels, yes. A shared condition.
Ilgen Jorgerkishar, an interesting geography. This seems to be about separation, paths diverging.
Exactly. The distance growing between people who were once close. Our clocks no longer show the same time. We live in other worlds. Even the air is different. The shared nest and home, the songs, they're not the same anymore.
It's a poignant look at how connections can fray over time, despite shared history, ending with that hope that if someone else is closer now, they'll understand the speaker's heart.
And the last poem in our selection. Hey, Bray, Nere Jadi Orson. Hey, you there? Where are you going? It leaves us with a sense of uncertainty.
Yeah, being lost in darkness and a void, questioning who's responsible, what price needs to be paid for, something not quite understood.
The mentions of Solzhenitsyn and Chekhov feel significant, too.
They do. Writers who stared into the abyss of human suffering and societal problems. It suggests a search for meaning, for accountability, in a world that feels dark and maybe unjust.
So stepping back from the individual poems after this deep dive into Nataša Bajić's work, what have we really seen?
We've definitely seen that unique style the critics talked about, that blend of almost casual conversational language with really deep, profound observations.
And she tackles these huge universal themes: love, loss, memory, meaning, but through her own very distinct lens, right?
Absolutely. It's familiar territory, but the perspective feels fresh, evocative. And you can see why those critics were so passionate. Her voice feels significant, especially within contemporary Serbian poetry.
It's important to circle back to that point Golchkov made, though. She might not be writing about politics directly.
Right. It's not overtly political commentary, but the poems powerfully reflect the human experience of living through turbulent times, dealing with trauma, loss, hope, the fundamentals.
The echoes are there, even if the headlines aren't.
Exactly. It's subtle, but it resonates deeply. That feeling of navigating Scylla and Charybdis, as Jurevich put it.
Which brings us to maybe a final thought for you, listening in. Think about how Bajić's poetry, even coming from a specific place and time, taps into things we all feel.
Yeah, what kind of silent screams, maybe, or those unspoken truths her words stir up in you? Does her way of looking at loss, or hope, or memory resonate with your own experiences?
It might encourage you to seek out more of her work, maybe even the original Serbian if you can, or just to look for other poets who tackle life's big themes in ways that aren't always direct, but make you think, make you feel.
Definitely worth exploring.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.